Hi YouTube, in this video I'm going to be making JOH YOWZA, who is a YUZZUM. He's a creature from Return of the Jedi in the band. But first I'll show you some of my materials. So that was some wood flooring glue. Here's just some sellotape and some kitchen paper. Quite often I use that for like paper mache. Got some foam in the back there, and then some aluminium foil, and I've got this DAS or DAS, however you say it. Milliput is what I normally use. The DAS was just like from a car boot sale, and I thought I'd give it a try this time. Normally I like to use Milliput. Some more sellotape on a dispenser. I've got some easy to bend aluminium wire, some cocktail sticks, and just some modelling tools and a pair of wire cutters. This is probably my favourite shape for sculpting. It's just got a nice sort of blade on it. Okay, for the first stage all I did was just bend the aluminium wire. You just twist it around itself just to make what's called an armature. This is just to strengthen all of the modelling clay and things that you put on top. For the next stage I just squashed a whole load of aluminium foil just to give me my basic overall shape. This actually saves quite a lot of money on more expensive modelling materials as well. Next I used this DAS or DAS air drying clay. Normally this would cost £4 a pack, but I got it for 50p at a car boot sale, so I thought I'd try it. I'm not that keen on it really, but you can see I've used it here to get the overall shape of his head, and then I've gone on to cover the body as well. This type of air drying clay gets quite crumbly after it's dried, and I always worry that bits will kind of chip off it. So it's no good for a finished product, but it's good for these kind of underneath layers, you know, where you bulk out your actual character and then you can cover the whole thing with Milliput to strengthen it, and the Milliput is much more hard wearing and will last forever. So for the next stage I used a lot more of my 2mm aluminium wire just to twist around the legs, and this really strengthens up the legs. And I'll still be obviously sculpting over the top of this with the Milliput to get the shape of everything. But you can see I've attached it to the base. I made holes in this base and the wire goes through the base onto the bottom. You can see here, look, where the air drying clay has dried, it's cracked, and you can see just how kind of brittle it is. But like I say, the Milliput will be going over the top, so it'll strengthen everything anyway. Because he has big feet but his legs are quite spindly, I decided to add the Milliput next onto his legs just to strengthen him. So mostly this just involves squashing the Milliput over the wire, and it actually squashes into the twisted wire as well, so that strengthens it. The Milliput can be pressed down onto the base as well, so it actually kind of forms a seal on the plywood base. You can see here, look, I've covered up some of the initial cracks in the DAS, but look, you can see it breaks really quite easily. So I definitely would not recommend that particular air drying clay if you're trying to do finished products. Right, here you can see I've covered a lot more of him with the Milliput. I've started to put the fur texture in. This is just a case of using that tool I showed you at the beginning that was sort of plastic, but it's got sort of a blade like edge to it, and you can press down into the clay and you just get this texture quite quickly. This really didn't take me that long to do. I did his chest area and I've just put his nose on as well. You can see I've also drilled a couple of holes in the top of his head, and I've put a couple of aluminium wires in for his ears. Those were actually glued in place as well with a little bit of the PVA flooring glue. Next I continued onto his head, so I put his lips on and his eyes and these kind of flappy bits he's got on the side next to his nose, and then obviously I've done a lot more of the fur as well all over his face, and that starts to give him really good texture on his head as well. I've put a tongue in his mouth, and there's a bit more refining to do, but this is the main basic shape. The eyes, I just rolled 2 balls, let them dry, and after they're dried I put them in place and then just put the eyelids over the top just to fix them in place. Next I made some wire armatures for each hand. This was just a case of twisting some wire around each other, so you've got 3 fingers and a thumb for each one. You can see here, this is what it ends up like. And you just got to have one extra long wire that you can actually push down into the tin foil on his arm. That holds it in place. And again, you can glue it with some flooring PVA glue. The reason that I use flooring PVA glue or wood PVA glue is just that it's so much stronger than normal PVA. Here you can see that I've used Milliput again to sculpt the hands. That's just a case of putting the fingers on, squashing them onto the wires, same with the thumb, and then you're just adding all the little pads and things on the top of that. I've also done his teeth and his gums. So with that I made all the teeth separately. Put the gums in like two kind of long sausages, and then you push the teeth up into the gums and just do a bit of sculpting, and that holds them in place. Next I use System 3 acrylic paints to paint the whole thing. So I started off with a very dark brown base colour for all the fur areas. Put that on, and then I did like a very dark flesh colour for his lips and all the top of his head and everything like that. A slightly yellowy colour for the base of his chest area, and then it's a combination of wet washes, so wet washes of like a darker brown colour into the chest area on top of the yellow. That brings out some of the texture in there. On the fur I then use like lighter brown colours, and I used a dry brush technique, because you just use hardly any paint on your brush. Dry your brush out, and then you're just dusting it really over the top of all of the fur, and that brings out all the texture of the fur really nicely. You can also dry brush a lighter flesh colour on the lips and the nose, and that brings out the kind of lighter areas of those as well. Gives it some nice texture. You can see here I dry brushed onto the pads on his hand as well, so that makes those stand out more. I really like this technique as well, where you can add little kind of washes of colour. So in this chest area I used like a sort of a yellow ochre colour as well to go around each of those pads, and same with his feet here with the toes, yellow ochre kind of wash. That made a difference, and I painted the base in this nice kind of flat sort of greyish brown colour. Painted his eyes red with little black pupils. So that's the overall effect, and I'm really happy with it. I hope you've enjoyed this video and that it's been useful for some of you. I'd like to thank Milliput for sponsoring this channel and sending me free Milliput from time to time. It really helps me make these models. Check out my other videos if you get a chance. Hit subscribe if you want to see more things that I post in the future. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.